This week on Brian Ross Investigates, a family tragedy playing out in court this week. Father versus son over the murder of the mother.
Not guilty.
Iowa farmer Jason Carter was found not guilty of the murder of his mother, Shirley Carter. But his father, Bill Carter, sued him in civil court and won a $10 million verdict against his son for the death of the mother.
And then I knew that he did.
Now, this week, the Iowa Supreme Court is being asked to overturn the civil verdict or give Jason Carter a new civil trial based on new evidence.
So you really want a chance for another trial?
Absolutely. I'm all for it. Let's go back and really show people how things were.
Plus, an exclusive inside look at some of the organizers of the January Stop the Steal movement, including this Republican Party operative.
This begins the rebellion.
Everyone at this point comes prepared for battle to protest. It's no longer just these peaceful marches that we have. It is battle.
Greg Palast, let me ask you the same question. Do you anticipate more trouble, more violence in the coming months?
Yeah, absolutely.
From the Law&Crime Trial Network, this is Brian Ross Investigates.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to our viewers on Facebook Live. I'm Brian Ross, joined as always by my colleague Rhonda Schwartz. And Rhonda, we begin with an exclusive inside look at one of the organizers behind the January 6th Stop the Steal rally on the Capitol steps that led to riot and insurrection. He's one of the more unlikely people helping to stir things up, a young African-American man who claims to have deep ties to both the far right and some Republicans in Congress, Rhonda.
That's right, Brian. His name is Ali Alexander, and he's a young activist on the far right of the Republican Party. He was very active in the for the Republicans in the recent Senate runoff race, and he has spoken openly of rebellion.
This begins the rebellion, and I will not bow before an illegitimate government. Not now, not tomorrow, not if they imprison me.
To help us get a better understanding of what happened there, we're joined by two investigative reporters who've been taking a close look at this, Greg Palast and Zach Roberts. And Greg, let me start with you. There wasn't supposed to even be a march, was there?
Right. The sponsors of the Trump rally on January 6th at the Ellipse, which is the Washington Monument, absolutely said it's not in our permit to march. They promised the Washington Metro Police, we will not march. They told the White House there cannot and will not be a march. We're not set up to do it. It's dangerous.
But everything changed when the president called on his supporters to march to the Capitol.
We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Brian, remember, if you're moving tens of thousands of people across 1.5 miles of Washington, you have to close the streets, you have to have police barricades, ambulances, porta potties, and of course, monitors to make sure that people don't go out of control. But they did.
At the same time, another rally was taking place at the Capitol, led in part by a Republican operative named Ali Alexander, who later said he worked with 3 Republican congressmen to organize the rally.
I was the person who came up with the January 6th idea with Congressman Gosar, Congressman Mo Brooks, and then Congressman Andy Biggs. We 4 schemed up of putting maximum pressure on Congress while they were voting so that who we couldn't lobby, we could change the hearts and the minds of Republicans who were in that body hearing our loud war from outside.
Alexander had earlier in Georgia helped lead protests against Republicans who failed to endorse President Trump's claims of voter fraud.
We'll light the whole shit on fire.
And what was the reaction of the crowd when he said that in Georgia?
Oh, they all started cheering. They started cheering USA, USA, and chanting, Trump, and they all chanted America First, which is, become a rallying call beyond Make America Great Again for these basically white nationalists that have started taking over the Republican Party.
And Greg, what you and Zach have documented really is the intersection between the far right and the Republican Party.
Well,
there's not much distance between them, right?
Yeah, I was very shocked when, especially Zach uncovered, because he does go undercover for us and went into their organization and found out that Ali Alexander. Now, this is after he made his statement that we are going to light this whole shit on fire. So after we had reported on his incendiary remarks, the Georgia Republican Party and the National Republican Senate Committee, headed by Rick Scott, decided to use Ali Alexander after this threat to be the keynote at their meeting for Get Out the Vote to win the Georgia Senate runoffs. They wanted to bring in his 200,000 followers as Get Out the Vote troops for the Georgia runoff, even though they knew very well, after our reports and others, that he was constantly making violent threats. Also, we have him on film yucking it up with a Nazi holding a giant swastika flag saying, well, let's talk about what we have in common, which is quite extraordinary.
So what do you think this means in terms of the Republican Party? Are they at the point now where they are really literally in lockstep with some of these groups, at least some of them?
Well, I don't know. Again, I didn't hear back from the party. I do know it's the top leadership of the party in Georgia and in their Senate campaign, which is Rick Scott's outfit, that decided to hook up with Ali Alexander. Clearly what's attractive to them is that his massive hundreds of thousands of followers and they thought that they could activate them to win the Georgia runoff. I mean, one of the problems we have is this kind of playing footsie with the alt-right that you have among some elements of the Republican Party. It's not the entire Republican Party, but there were some Congress members who are very close to Ali Alexander and obviously Alex Jones.
Zach, every American has the right to vote, but not the right to riot. Do you think there's going to be more violence in the months to come under a Biden administration?
I have, unfortunately, almost no doubt. The only thing I was surprised of on January 6th is that it didn't happen before then. Everyone at this point comes prepared for battle to protest. It's no longer just these peaceful marches that we have. It is battle.
Greg Palast, let me ask you the same question. Do you anticipate more trouble, more violence in the coming months?
Yeah, absolutely. As Zach was saying, you have people coming to demonstrations armed. This is new business. They're coming to demonstrations armed. I'm very concerned that the police, for example, I've worked with law enforcement. It was a murder scene, a crime scene, the Capitol. A cop had his head crushed by a fire extinguisher. Why weren't people, as they walked out, arrested, had their phones confiscated, which has those selfies, because certainly someone took pictures of the people that killed that cop. Why weren't those phones confiscated? And then they were allowed to literally leave a murder crime scene, which is astonishing. And so what that is a signal to these groups. If you're going to cause mayhem, you may have some help from the people who are supposed to stop the mayhem.
Very troubling. Greg Palast, Zach Roberts, thank you both for joining us this evening. Fascinating insight, and we'll get back to you as the story continues to develop.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Brian.
Ali Alexander did not respond to our request for a comment. He's told others, despite what we saw on tape, that he's never had any role in inciting violence. He has not been charged with any crime in connection with the January 6th insurrection. Coming up next, a family tragedy and a showdown in court. Father against son over the murder of a mother. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. This week, the Iowa Supreme Court will hear arguments in a case involving an Iowa farmer, Jason Carter, accused by his father, Bill Carter, of murdering his mother, Shirley Carter. Now, Jason Carter was found not guilty of murder charges in a criminal trial, but he was found guilty of that same charge in a civil trial in a case brought by his father, Bill Carter, and ordered to pay $10 million to Bill Carter. This week, lawyers for Jason Carter will argue before the court that he deserves to have that verdict either overturned or that he should receive a new trial. Earlier, I talked with Jason Carter and his wife, Shelley, about what they hoped would happen. Jason and Shelley, thank you very much for being here. What are your expectations and hopes from this Supreme Court hearing?
Well, we're hoping that they'll either throw it out or at least overturn the ruling for the civil and give us a new trial. Our main hopes are just to have it thrown out altogether, but at the least get a new trial.
Not guilty. Is that your verdict, ladies and gentlemen?
You were found not guilty in the criminal trial, but still the civil trial verdict is hanging over you. What's it been like to live with that? Shelley and Jason, you can answer both.
I don't know. It's just like a monkey that's always on your back. And, it's just so wrong and so heartbreaking.
It's really important that our children see how we've never given up, and we will never give up. I'll fight this to the bitter end. There's no doubt about that. Until this is overturned or something's done different, just have to keep on putting up a huge fight.
Carter's appeal will be argued by Allison Kanye, making the case that there is new evidence that came out during Carter's criminal trial about other possible suspects.
Brian, there are 6 different bases for this appeal, but there's one that we're focusing on in particular, and that is the fact that the civil jury did not have access to the same evidence that the criminal jury had access to. After the civil trial concluded in December of 2017, Jason was charged with homicide. And at that point, we began to receive discovery from the state, which showed us that there were a number of other viable suspects with multiple reports that corroborated each other that had not been adequately investigated by law enforcement. That formed the basis of a lot of our testimony and evidence offered in the criminal trial. The civil jury did not have that same opportunity. We think it is only fair and just that Jason be given an opportunity to present all of the evidence to this civil jury and then have them make a decision.
Did Jason have to go on trial again? Is that more than you think he can bear?
Jason is extremely tough. He's been through more than anyone I know in 6 years. And I think he will do whatever it takes to continue to work towards clearing his name. Obviously, he's been acquitted. That's the most important part. But I don't worry about Jason getting tired. He was accused of murdering his mother. That's one of the most horrific things you could ever possibly be accused of. And of course, he wants to fight until the bitter end to prove his innocence, whether it's in a civil courtroom or a criminal courtroom.
So this civil trial verdict still hangs over his head in a way.
Absolutely. It's a $10 million civil judgment. Bill Carter has shown that he intends to try and collect it if he can. How could that not hang over somebody's head?
Has there been any attempt to sort of settle this out of court?
No, I don't think either party would agree to any kind of settlement. Jason would certainly never agree to anything that required him to admit that he murdered Shirley, because he didn't. And Bill Carter seems convinced that Jason was responsible, even despite the quick acquittal that we achieved in the criminal court. I don't think settlement is a possibility for either of these parties.
Jason, have you talked with your father at all since you were found not guilty?
No, I haven't. I've seen him in passing. We farm right down the road from each other, so it's kind of hard not to see each other. Just driving by in the vehicle or tractor, combine, whatever have you. It's inevitable. We see each other in passing, but it's funny because one day he'll wave and the next, you get a cold shoulder, but it goes both ways.
Jason, he told us that he has tried to commit suicide at least 4 separate times.
I've heard that he has tried 7 or 8 times to commit suicide. And I don't understand that. I mean, it's just, it's terrible.
Brian, I was with the family for 25 years before this happened. And Shirley was like my mom, and Billy was like my dad. That is not the man we know. The man we know had more strength and honor and dignity, that is not the man we know. But that's the man he's become. And it's sad.
After you were found not guilty, was there any new effort to find who was in fact guilty since you were cleared by the jury?
We've asked the local prosecutor and law enforcement to look into the people, that should be held responsible for this, or the people that we believe are responsible. And we were told that nothing would ever happen. No one was going to look into anything. So.
Well, they've made public statements. Both law enforcement and the prosecutor have made public statements that it's a cold case and that it's closed, but we know it's should be anything but closed. And we want to fight for the people that have done this to be held responsible. And we want someone to truly investigate, everything that was never investigated. And those people still walk out there today. And let me tell you that is deeply sickening.
It's pretty scary, actually.
And it's scary.
I don't know. I don't know what could be done or what can happen.
We know it's old. We know it's cold. But you know what? We need someone to do their job for Shirley.
So you really want a chance for another trial?
Absolutely. I'm all for it. Let's go back and really show people how things were. Show them the true facts, not the smoke and mirrors that came in the civil suit. So, yep,
and then
I am gung-ho. I'm ready.
All right. Well, thank you both very, very much for coming in and talking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Up next, we'll hear from the other side, from Bill Carter, Jason Carter's father. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. We continue now with our report on the family tragedy involving the Carter family of Iowa. And we're joined by Mark Weinhardt, who's the lawyer for Bill Carter. Mr. Weinhardt, thank you for being here. You'll argue before the court this week about the case, whether it should be overturned or there should be a new trial. Why do you think he should not get a new trial?
Well, Brian, I'm going to be arguing to the Supreme Court in 48 hours, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to preview my argument to the justices publicly. I will say that we have every confidence that the judge who conducted the civil trial in December of 2017 did it right. She made the right decisions about what evidence did and did come into the case. The jury heard that evidence. They made a decision very quickly, in just 2 hours, determined that Jason was liable for killing his mother. We think that that was the right decision. And on Thursday afternoon, we're going to defend that decision in the Iowa Supreme Court.
As you know, the argument is that there's new information about other possible suspects who were never, according to Jason Carter's lawyers, fully investigated. Does Bill Carter think still that his son killed Shirley Carter?
Bill is firmly convinced that Jason killed Shirley, which has to be one of the most shocking and troubling things that a father could ever conclude about his own offspring. And yet Bill came to that conclusion based on the evidence. He is firm in that conclusion. The so-called new evidence is something that Jason had an opportunity to present to the judge who heard the civil trial. He spent 3 days, we had a second trial effectively, for 3 days where he was able to present all of that evidence to that judge. That judge decided two things. First, she decided that that evidence, which was rumors, hearsay, innuendo from people in jail trying to make deals because of their own criminal circumstances, she decided that that evidence was not admissible, that even if there were a new trial, the jury wouldn't be allowed to hear it because under the rules of evidence, it simply did not come into the case. Second, she decided that that evidence simply did not square with the uncontested facts of the case. It just did not match the physical facts of how it was that Shirley was murdered. And so she determined that that evidence did not warrant a new trial. And that's what we're going to be defending in 2 days, is the judge's decision about how that alleged evidence does not in fact change the case at all.
Mr. Weinhardt, a question for you from Rhonda Schwartz. Rhonda?
It's such a family tragedy. How is your client, Bill Carter, who's in his 80s, holding up through all this?
You know, Bill is a man of routine and he's a man of the earth. He has been farming the same plot of land for more than 50 years, and he's grown that farm. He's a scrimper and a saver, and the rhythm of the planting season and the rhythm of life in the farm economy, that's what keeps him going. It's what keeps him putting one foot in front of the other every day. Were he to retire, I don't know what would happen to him, but as long as he's got the farm and as long as he's got that life in the very home where he and Shirley spent all those decades, on the land that the two of them worked together, as long as he's got that, he gets by. Sadder, wiser, but he gets by.
All right. Mark Weinhardt, thank you so much. We look forward to watching your arguments before the Iowa Supreme Court and continue to report on the story. A program reminder, a story about the Carter case will appear on A&E Thursday night at 10 as part of the Law and Crime Productions series, Killer Cases. I'm Brian Ross. Thank you for joining us. And thanks to everyone at the Law and Crime team who so ably get us on the air and off the air without a hitch.